Technology, diversity, wine, the redwoods, and everything in between. Welcome to the Northern California Bay Area, and one show takes you inside the real estate that makes it all happen. This is By the Bay.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to By the Bay. I'm your host, Dan Ancheta, and I'm really grateful that you're here today. And welcome back to the podcast. So thank you for viewing this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, YouTube, or wherever else you might be tuning in. Grateful that you're here, and thanks for being part of the audience. Today, I have an awesome guest, Jaeden Wilson from W Real Estate, is here. And today we're going to talk about all sorts of great stuff, and entrepreneurship, I think, is really what we're going to focus on. And we were just kind of chatting right before we started recording, and I wanted to hear about your background. We started talking about it. I was like, stop right there. Let's just do this on the podcast. So you grew up singing.
Yes.
And so I want to talk about that because that's interesting.
Okay.
And then I want to talk about your journey into real estate and kind of what you're seeing in the market and all that stuff. But mostly tell us about you.
Background.
Yeah.
Well, we were talking about, why I'm comfortable semi with
Yeah.
something
You're like, I already know how this microphone works.
No, I grew up singing. We'd go on the radio. My parents used to put on this big festival in our hometown. And so, which I'm from Raydell, California, which is in Humboldt County. And they would put it on, and so we'd go on the radio to sort of broadcast it and do all the things you have to do to promote an event.
Cool.
And so we'd go on there, and we would just, I don't know, I just kind of got used to like being on stage, talking to people. I don't know, just kind of this.
Definitely helps in like the sales type of position.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, I think it's not like my number one, it's not how I am naturally. I just kind of think I had to do it if that was what I wanted to do.
Right.
So I just kind of had to get
What type of music?
Pop.
Okay.
For sure. It was definitely pop. And yeah, I did it for a long time. I thought I was going to go on The Voice. I thought I was going to go on American Idol.
Cool.
I thought I was going to do like all of these big things. And then paths just changed. I just started.
Yeah. And so how did you get into a career in real estate?
Yeah. Well, so when I moved here about 4 years ago now, I think, I was going to school at Santa Rosa JC, and that was originally what I was going to study at the JC. And my grandpa's actually a broker, been a broker developer his whole life in Humboldt County. So it just kind of, I was like, oh, that sounds fun and interesting. And I didn't really know what else I wanted to do.
Yeah.
And so I started studying that, and then I kind of veered off into early childhood education. And so that was my major for majority of the time I was at the JC. I never finished, whatever. Anyways, at the whole time, I was making cookies and just getting myself out there on social media. I learned how to make cookies completely on my own.
Okay.
It's self-taught, so I just was.
Yeah, that's really cool. So the audience may not know.
I know.
I
might
know.
not. I talk about it.
So you're an entrepreneur.
Yes.
Right.
Well,
So like this is one thing that you do. You also have like a custom cookie business.
yes. So
Right.
yes, it's called Frostyz Bakery by Jaden. Frostyz with a Z is a play on the word frosting, because that's my favorite part of the cookie making process.
Got
is
it.
actually decorating them. So it's just a play on it. But yeah, that just kind of just came out of nowhere. I just, when I graduated high school, I got cookies made for my graduation party. And then I saw them and I was like, oh my gosh, I kind of want to learn how to do that.
Like these are the fancy ones that are like
Very-
designed
yes.
and like you can have a theme and you.
Yes. Not
Yeah.
the buttercream or like the ones you see in the store. You
Right,
can't
right.
really buy them anywhere, really. I mean, you can buy like some interesting ones from like Target or something, but
Sure.
you can't really buy like actual decorated themed cookies. They don't teach it in culinary school, from what I hear.
Yeah.
They
What's
don't teach it anywhere.
what's the craziest customization that someone's asked you to do?
I think, I don't know if it was great. I recently did an all watercolor design, which I'd never done before. It was my father-in-law passed away in September, and so he was a big fisherman, and so I wanted to make some sort of cookies for the memorial, but it's kind of, memorials are tricky because you don't want to be like cheesy or have
Sure.
some like
But there's a way
kids'
to
birthday
honor
cookies. Right.
someone.
And so he was a big fisherman, and so I did a whole watercolor design basically of like a lake with fish jumping out of the water and trees, and it had his name and everything. And so that was like probably the most challenging set I'd ever made to this day, because
Yeah.
it was completely watercolor is a whole beast on cookies because
I didn't know you can do that.
Yeah, it's food coloring
Got it.
and just water. And so if you use too much water, the icing can crack. It's like a whole thing. So you have to be really careful. And then it's like blending. It's basically just, it's painting, but just on cookies. So it's like, it was
I
a
would feel
challenge.
bad eating them. I would be like, are we
Yeah.
allowed to eat these? 'Cause
Well,
they're so
and it
cool.
was, and this particular one was like a puzzle design. So it was like all these different hexagon shaped cookies morphed together to make this piece.
Wow.
Yeah. So, yeah,
That sounds really cool.
it was definitely fitting, I
Right.
think, for
Well, you're doing things like birthday parties and
Yes.
graduations and
weddings, bridal
weddings.
shower, everything.
Right.
Yeah, and bachelorette parties
I'm sure
have
those are
been
interesting.
big. Yeah. Yes.
The kitchen is just full of all these. You must have very interesting like cutting tools and funny, interesting shapes.
Yeah,
Put it
it's
that way
just
for
really
the.
it's just cookie cutters. But there's a whole market for cookie
Oh, I
cutters,
bet.
which you'd never think really. I
Yes.
mean, you probably think of like the stainless steel ones, from Walmart
Sure.
or something, but there's like all different kinds. People own the 3D printers, which like prints them out at
Wild.
any shape they want, and it's a whole business, the cookie cutters.
Man. Okay. So I think what's cool. I mean, lots of stuff's cool, but I think what's cool is the entrepreneurial mindset. So I don't think everyone's like cracked up to be that. I don't think that everyone
Yeah.
has that kind of entrepreneurial mindset where
Yeah.
they're like, oh, I've got this idea. Lots of people have ideas. Very few people actually take those ideas and do something with them.
Mhm.
What do you think that is in you? Like, where did that come from?
I really don't know. I think I've always been self-motivated because I kind of, when you grow up doing something like music, you kind of have to be self-motivated a little bit. And if you think that that's what you want to do for the rest of your life, which for a very long time I did, you kind of have to be motivated. I mean, there's no one that's going to just like walk in and hand you something. So you kind of have to be. So I think that is really what kind of taught it to me. And also, like, I'm an only child. So, doing things that normal kids my age would do weren't really something that I did because most of the people I hung out with were my parents' friends and people who
Interesting.
were older than me. So I jive well with people who are older than me versus people who are my age. And so it's interesting because I have, Angela and Melissa and, Melanie Bryan from Vanguard. Like, she's one of my closest friends in real estate here.
Right.
And, she's 28, 29, and I forget that that we're so far apart in age because it's just, I don't know, we click. So it's
Yeah,
it's
that's cool.
funny. I don't know.
It's neat that you mentioned Melissa and Angela. So that Sonoma County Home Group have been on the
Yes.
podcast in the past, and they're
Yes.
good friends of ours. So you're a mentee of theirs.
Yes.
So talk to me about that. So that I love the mentor-mentee
Yes.
relationship. I think
Yeah.
it's super important. So how did you
Yeah.
get into that, and what does that look like?
Yeah. So I came from a very small boutique brokerage. And so when I was thinking of making the move to something, bigger, I was very concerned that I wouldn't have any help. That was like a main concern. Because when you come from like a smaller brokerage, there are oftentimes, a manager or somebody there who's there to help you. And at a bigger brokerage, I didn't really know how that worked. So my first question was like, okay, who's going to help me? Because I don't know what I'm doing. And so I first found Angela and Melissa from Instagram, which I think is
I think
how a lot of
everyone
people
does.
do.
Yes, I
Yeah.
found them on everyone. Yeah, I think exactly. They're really good at
They
the
are.
Instagram and social presence.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
shout out to Sonoma County Home
Sonoma County
Group.
Home Group.
Yeah,
Yep.
check them out. Follow them
Check
on
them out.
Instagram.
Yeah. And so I just DM'd them because I knew they were with W, and that was kind of the number one place where I was thinking I was going to go. And I just asked them. At first, I asked if they wanted someone on their team because I thought that's how it worked. I thought you had to be on a team
Right.
to get help. I didn't know there was like any other way that people could help you. And, Melissa had said, oh, well, there's mentors at W. There's all these mentorship opportunities. And I was like, oh, okay. So, met with Dennis, and I told him I'd been talking to Angela and Melissa, and he thought it was great. He thought it was going to be a really good fit, which it is. So, yeah. And then we just been there ever since.
Nice. Yeah, they're
So,
great. So
yeah.
you're in good hands,
Yeah.
and they know the game inside and out. And hopefully, I think again from the outside, because I watch what people are posting and so on. It seems like since making that move and having that mentorship, you've been really picking up.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy because I always get asked ever since I came from, my old brokerage coming to W. I get asked all the time, like, oh, what are you doing differently? How are you, doing this? Because I went, that whole first year and didn't close anything. And I don't really think I've done anything differently. And I don't necessarily think it's, being with W, I don't think people really look at it the same, just they look at you. They don't really look at like, oh, she's with this brokerage or that brokerage. They don't really, it doesn't cross their mind really. I think it's just, I was just consistent for that whole time. Even when I wasn't doing anything, I was still just consistent. And then eventually it pays off.
Consistent with what?
Social media is for sure my number one. And then also, anytime somebody would contact me or I get just like a little hint that they might want to make a move, they might want to do something eventually. Just kind of keeping those relationships, because if you don't, they can go work with someone else.
Right.
They don't have
100%.
to work with you. So yeah, social media is my big one. I don't do any door knocking, cold calling. I don't do any of it. It's really just organic.
Yeah. I mean, it works. Like it all works.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of what your conversion rates are and where your heart is and what you like to do and so on. But I see you're working open houses and you're...
Yeah. Open houses are interesting. I've found that some of the open houses that people wouldn't jump at to go and like hold.
Yeah.
Though sometimes those are like the best ones to go and hold.
A lot of times, because for the listeners, right? So a lot of times people think that if you have a listing, you do the open houses,
Yes.
but that's not necessarily true.
Right.
Where you might have a listing, but someone else in the office actually holds the
Right.
property open for
Right.
you. And a lot of times it's the junior agents
Right.
who are sacrificing their Saturdays and
Yeah.
Sundays to
Mhm.
go and host open
Yeah.
the house. And,
Yeah.
and the incentive for you to do
Mhm.
it is that you might meet a buyer
Right.
who
Right.
doesn't have representation.
Right.
Do you hit it off? You kind of answer their
Mhm.
questions, and
Yeah.
you might meet a new client
Yeah.
there, right?
Yeah.
So do you have a strategy when you go into an open house, or is it just kind of like talk to everyone and be nice, or do you do it in a specific way?
I think everyone holds open houses differently. I think some, are really adamant, that they need you to sign in. They need you to get all the information. They want to know your
Yeah.
whole life story. They won't even let you cross the threshold before you tell them everything that they need to know. And for me, I think I can kind of tell when somebody is really interested or when they're maybe just there going to see open houses on a Saturday.
Sure.
It's not really anything they are looking to do. They just want
Right.
to see the house, whatever. I think for me, like, I have gained, leads. I'm working on an offer right now, and she was one that I met at an open house. So it does pay off. I just think that sometimes it's just better to like hang back and kind of let them look at the house, see
Yeah.
what's going on. If they're interested, you're gonna know that
Yeah.
they're interested.
I feel like it's one of those. It's somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
You don't want to just be the door opener.
Right.
It just like doesn't say anything.
Mhm.
You also don't want to be the person who's trailing people around the house and
Yeah.
bugging them,
Yes.
right? There's somewhere in the middle
Yeah.
where you're like helpful and
Yeah.
you check in with them and you
Mhm.
like are showing your value
Right.
and asking good questions
Right.
and then like getting out of the way.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And I think, it's just evident, if somebody wants a tour, if someone wants you to walk around and
Yeah,
tell
yeah.
them about the house, you'll kind of get the feeling,
Yeah.
you'll get the vibe that, hey, they might want you to do this, or these people, some people just walk in and hi,
I like
just breeze right by.
I thought about making like a parody video
Yeah.
of different people you meet at an open house.
Yeah.
There's like the power walkers
Right.
that just like speed through.
Yeah, and
There's the
they're
people
gone.
who open every door.
Right.
There's the people who ask like bizarre questions,
Right.
like how deep are the footings and the foundation? Like, how am I supposed to know?
Yeah. Right. And there are just some things that you don't really know. I mean, when you're the listing agent, you obviously have like a
Yeah.
whole knowledge of every single bit of the house.
Sure.
But when you're just coming in and holding an open house, there just is going to be things
You know the
that
basics.
you don't know.
Right. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
Right. And, the thing about holding open houses is a lot of sellers do think that if you're the agent, for me, you're going to do the open house. And some sellers don't like it when there's another person coming in and holding the open house. Some sellers are very particular.
Right.
But I think it's just people don't understand the reasoning behind open house. They think that it is to sell the house, which it is 100%. But
Yeah.
for the agent, from an agent standpoint, it's to get a lead.
Right. Right. It's to meet the neighbors who might be
Right.
future sellers or to meet
Right.
buyers who don't have an agent.
Right.
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 Also, if you've, my home buying experience, right, it was like
Mhm.
the agent pre-screen houses for us,
Mhm.
like on Wednesdays or Thursdays, whenever the
Right.
tour was. And then we
Right.
would go to the open houses and kind of drive around and check them
Mhm.
out. And it's good to go look at like when I'm talking with my clients, I tell them like, go look at a bunch of houses. Don't
Right.
just go look at one.
Right.
Even if you're 6 months away from being ready to buy,
Right.
go start looking. Even if
Right.
you just don't drag your agent along.
No,
right?
exactly.
But like,
Yeah. Go to an
go
open
drive
house.
around,
Yeah.
check it out, and kind of figure out what you like, what you don't like, what your needs are, what your wants are,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of start making that list because it
Right.
might be different than what you think.
Right. Exactly. And I think also like location. I mean, some people could think that they
Yeah.
want a house in this particular
Has to
location
be
and
in
they
this-
drive
yeah.
through and then they're like, never mind, I don't really like this location. Or maybe I want somewhere they'd never even heard of before, a
Right.
whole location they had no idea existed, and that's the one they like.
Yeah, totally.
So it's interesting.
Yeah, very interesting. So how long you been in the business now? 2
A
years?
year and a half.
Year and a half?
Yeah.
So you're entering the business in like the hardest
I know.
time like that we've seen in a
Yeah.
long time.
Yeah.
And you seem to be growing and like doing pretty well
Yeah.
in the business.
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything besides the consistency of just kind of showing up on social and following up
Yeah.
people? Is there anything else that you're doing differently than like making more cookies? Like what?
Well, it's funny. All of them have came from cookies. All of my clients and deals that
Wait,
I've
tell me more
closed.
about that.
So the very first house I sold was a house in Windsor. And the couple, it was a husband and wife, and the wife had actually won a cookie giveaway from me a year before. And so that's how I met her. That's how she met me. And then a year later, on the same month, we closed on our house.
See, now I love stories like that because everyone's like, how am I supposed to meet
Yeah.
clients? How am I supposed to do this? And someone else that you know that I know is like a bartender,
Okay.
like part-time.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And like, that's where she gets a bunch of her clients from is like,
Right.
she has it's a fun gig for
Right.
her and she meets a bunch of clients
Yeah.
that way. So I guess the point of that is like, you don't have to buy leads.
No.
You don't have to spend a bunch of money. You don't
No.
have to door knock. Like, do what you're comfortable with.
Right.
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 And like, if it's parents from your kid's school, great.
Right.
Like, talk to them there. If
Right.
it's other soccer parents, great.
Right.
If it's clients of yours that you
Mhm.
meet through your other business,
Mhm.
awesome.
Yeah.
But just be
Right.
consistent with the follow up
Right.
and like good things can happen.
Yeah. And I think it really depends. Like, obviously, if you're doing this full time and you're new and you don't have anything, I think that there's just a certain level. Like for me, real estate is not my full-time gig. It's not what pays any bills. It's not what does anything. It's really just on the side, and I do it because I like it.
Is your plan to make it your full time?
I don't know. People always ask. I think if it came down, if it was ever there with real estate, sure. Of course. Like if I was ever rolling right along like Angela and Melissa are, then of course,
Yeah.
sure, But I think when you're new, it's kind of hard to think about that. It's kind of hard to like, oh yeah, this is what I'm going to do full time
Right.
forever. Because who knows? I mean, what if you don't have anybody?
Yeah. That's true. And I think there's something to like remaining flexible and seeing what happens, but also just kind of being open to like whatever the possibilities are. Like maybe you wind up having a huge cookie company and you have to have a bunch of employees. Like, I don't know what you're going to do.
Right.
Maybe it's something completely different.
Yeah.
Like, I didn't plan on being a mortgage banker,
Right.
part of my life plan.
No, I know. And neither, I mean, when I think about it, real estate wasn't part of my plan. Cookies definitely were not a part of my plan. I didn't even know cookies were a thing until I knew they were a thing.
I didn't know that you could make a living making cookies,
No,
to be
me
honest
neither.
with you.
Me neither. No clue. Just happened. It just happened that way.
That's awesome.
So it's interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So real estate wise, right? So you're humming right along, you're being consistent, you're kind of doing the thing. We're in a kind of flexing market right now, right? Where we're seeing volume pick up, then it slows down, rates go up, rates go down. It's kind of this yo-yo that's happening while we're trying to figure out what's going to happen with interest rates in the short term and long term. You're most of the time working with buyers.
Yeah.
Right.
For right now. Yeah.
For right now. That's
listings
typical.
are, I think listings are different. I'm not from here. So, I don't really, I feel like if it was like my hometown or something where I knew all these people who owned homes and maybe they wanted to do something, it'd be a little bit different. But listings, they're definitely more challenging,
right?
I think to get. I mean, obviously when it was like during COVID times and everybody was like, I'm selling, I'm
Sure.
doing, I'm getting all this money over asking, I'm going, that I think it was a little bit different time, but I wasn't part of it then.
Right.
I wasn't there.
You were baking cookies.
Yeah, I didn't even know it was going to happen yet. So
mostly buyers.
mostly.
And they're coming from your cookie business. They're coming from your all sorts of other
Yeah.
places. What are you seeing in the trends for home buyers right now? Because everyone's like, oh, you can't afford to buy. It's so expensive. I mean, it is.
It is,
right?
yeah.
But what's the trend that you're seeing? Are they move ups? Are they move downs? Are they first time buyers? Are they buying multi-generation?
Yeah.
Like, what are you seeing in the trends with your buyers?
Yeah, first time.
First time
sure.
buyers.
At least for me, it's been first time buyers. And I think you have to look at it realistically. Yes, it's going to cost money. Yes, the interest rates are high, but I think they have to be okay with that, and if they're not okay with it, then they shouldn't buy right now.
Well,
they should wait.
And the rates are high compared to the artificially low rates during COVID, for sure.
Yeah.
They're not high on a historic basis.
Right.
Like if you look at the average interest rate, we're like right in the normal range of what interest rates should be.
Right.
But at the context of, hey, my neighbor, my friend, my cousin is at 2.5%. Like I'm at 7%. That seems disproportionate and unfair, but it was hopefully a once in a lifetime event going through the COVID lockdowns and all
that nobody knew. Nobody thought was going to happen.
And all the economic turmoil that we just kind of had to make more money available and push rates down.
Right.
And people took advantage of that, which is great, but that shouldn't be considered the new normal.
No.
Right?
No.
So,
and I think I've been really just for lack of a better word, I've been really blessed by my clients being very realistic. Most of them, they come to me and they know what the situation is. They know that the interest rates are high. They know that it's going to be expensive, and they've been preparing for that. They've been saving, they've been planning, they've been,
and prioritizing.
Making sure. Yeah. And so I think that, everyone, I've gotten the question of like, how did you convince them to buy? I didn't convince them.
Yeah. And that's the right approach, honestly.
Yeah.
Like it's not our job to sell people on things, right? We're there to support them and educate them and teach them and make sure that they're comfortable and answer their questions. But I got to tell my clients, I'm like, I'm not the one who's making the 360 payments on this loan. Like you are. Right. So it's not really up to me on like what your total comfort level is on a monthly basis.
No.
That's your decision. My job is to show you what's possible based off of these variables. Right. And to like help guide you and get you the best deal and all these other things.
Right.
But I'm not the one who has to live with this forever.
Right. Exactly. And it's interesting because I think there are some people who think that you have to convince people to buy.
Right.
It's like your job to let them know this is how great it is, and you can build so much equity, and you can do all this. Everybody knows. I mean, people aren't renting because they don't know the benefits of buying a house. Like that's not why people are renting. People are renting because that's just what it is right now.
Right.
That's what they
may not know that it's possible for them to own. And I think a lot of it comes just down to like systemic issues where their parents were renters and they just think that they're in the renting class, right? They just, I'm not the type of person who's going to be able to own a home.
Right.
And those are the best types of clients for me. Like I love showing people like, no, you can do it.
Right.
Like it is totally possible. You don't have to be a millionaire to be able to afford a home. Like you could be a normal person, right? Just like a regular, normal income person.
Right.
Not with generational wealth, not with a $500,000 a year salary. Like you could just be a normal person, make it happen.
Right.
It may not be the perfect ideal home in the, most exclusive neighborhood in town, but there are options out there for you that we could figure out. So anyway.
Yeah. No, it's interesting.
Yeah. Okay. So a year and a half into the business, things are going pretty well. If someone like a friend of yours came in and was like, hey, I'm thinking about getting into real estate.
Yeah.
Like what advice would you, or maybe better question, if you can go back in time and give yourself advice, 2 years ago, thinking about entering the business, what would you say?
If I could give somebody else, a tip, I think it would be to not do it full time, because I wouldn't do it full time.
I've not heard this before. I'm curious.
I mean, at least in the beginning, because I think sometimes when people are new and they start out and maybe they're living off savings or however, whatever their situation is, they just are able to do it full time. I think there's always a sense of just like, I have to do, I have to, you need to buy a house for me.
Right.
You
And then you're
need to sell a
pushing.
house for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think people can pick up on that. They can
Hmm.
kind of sense that like, oh my gosh, if I change my mind right now, this guy's not going to make money. This
Right.
girl isn't going to pay her bill. Like it's just not going to,
Right.
this poor, I'm going to be hurting this,
Right.
this person if I choose not to buy. And so, I think it's great to have another business. And I think sometimes people make it out like, oh, you can't, it's going to be too crazy. You can't do anything else. You need to just focus on this. And I think there's variables. I think so. Because for me, like I don't have a set schedule with my other business.
Right.
So, if something comes up at 10 in the morning, okay, I
Right.
can make it work. If something comes up at 4, okay, I can make it work. I think it's probably harder if you have a set 9 to 5 job.
Yeah.
But I still think you could make it work, especially if your clients understand that,
Sure.
and they know before, like, she works. This is her job. This is how I met her. Maybe
Yeah.
I met her at this job,
I think it can be hard if you are like, depending on what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I know a lot of part-time
Yeah.
agents, or I think there's like a negative connotation with part-time.
Yeah.
It means that they're not fully into it. I don't
Right.
think that's true.
Right.
I know a number of agents have other jobs as
Mhm.
well. And a lot of them are very successful.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it takes the pressure off of the sale, and they
Yeah.
can play the long game.
Mhm.
Right. And just be like, hey, whenever you're ready to buy, let's do it. Let's look
Right.
at this. And if this doesn't work out, that's totally cool. And if it
Right.
does, great. And, do that thing,
Right.
and you don't have to push so hard.
Mm-hmm.
That said, I think that it takes a special kind of person to be
Mhm.
able to like stay relevant and stay up to date
Mhm.
with things. I could, from the lending side, I have some friends and, that are other mortgage
Mhm.
lenders, and they do a couple deals a year. And
Right.
it's really hard to stay up with the guidelines and know what's happening
Mhm.
and the processes and the systems, and then their experience overall isn't that great.
Right.
Because they just don't have like, their tools aren't sharp.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that if you're able to, if you have the personality where you can multitask and like stay relevant and
Right.
stay up on what's going on with the trends and
Right.
know what's happening in certain neighborhoods
Mhm.
and also work another job,
Right.
like that's great.
Right.
But if you can't do that, then you really kind of need to decide
Yeah.
if you're in it or not.
Yeah.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking of people that I know that have other gigs.
Yeah.
Right. And some of them are like full-time teachers.
Right. Yeah. Well, and some people are okay with that.
Right.
Some people like, oh, if I close a couple deals, it pays for this or it pays for that. It's
Yep.
fine, and that's fine. If you got your license
Yeah.
and that's what you got it for, then you're doing
I
exactly
think it's
what
I
you
think it's
got
a
it
really
for.
cool way for people to, be entrepreneurial,
Mm-hmm.
make a good living,
Right.
and also have the flexibility.
Right.
I know a lot of people who are doing it,
Mm-hmm.
part-time-ish or on a team, or like, hey, I can do 10 hours a week into this, but then they
Right.
have a team member or a mentor or someone who
Yeah.
can help them out.
That was always the funny part. I remember when I interviewed at W, and Dennis would ask like, okay, how many hours, a week? How many hours this? And I hated that question
Yeah.
because I never have had a normal like 9 to 5 work day. Like sometimes I work 14 hours, sometimes I work 2, sometimes I work like I work as much as I need to work.
Yeah.
Like it's never set. And so I'd always be like, well, I'll work when I need to work.
Yeah. My background, I work for a commercial bank. And
Yeah.
so it was like, suit and tie every day,
Mm-hmm.
clock in at 8,
Mm-hmm.
take an hour lunch break and leave at 6, whatever the hours. And now I think back to that. It's like, I don't know how I did that for so long.
Right.
And I don't think that I probably could if I had to.
Yeah.
But I don't think I could ever really want to go back to that set schedule, because
Mhm.
I'm the same way. My mornings, my days are all different,
Mhm.
and it's flexible, but also I might be up until midnight
Right.
working on a file
Right.
and helping, putting information together and talking to people, when they get off work at 8 p.m.
Right.
and missing out on some things because of that,
Right.
but also having the flexibility to pick up my kids and, go do other
Mhm.
things, whatever else you need to do. So it's a really great career. Anything like related to real estate is really fantastic, for the flexibility, but it doesn't mean it's not a lot of work.
Right.
Right.
I
It's just-
know.
It's
Yeah.
just going to happen at weird times.
Right. It
Right.
could happen whenever. I mean,
Yeah.
you just never know. It's like, oh, well, I guess I'm going to be up for a long time
Yeah,
today. I'm working
exactly.
a lot. I'm not
Got a
gonna do
lot
much
got a lot
else.
to do, and
Yeah.
that's okay.
Yeah.
I just imagine like I'm just like imagining you like you have your earbuds in and you're like talking to clients, but also you're like baking cookies and doing
Yeah.
your thing and you're multitasking and responding to inquiries
Yeah.
on, can you do this and how much does it cost to make this?
Yeah.
And that seems like a very busy life.
It is. But I don't have kids. I don't have kids. I don't really have anything else to occupy my time.
This
So
is the
it's
this is
like,
the time
what
to
would
do
I
it.
do?
Yeah.
What would I be doing if I wasn't doing this? Nothing. What are we doing
Pursuing your
anything?
singing career, doing your
Oh
thing.
gosh.
I'm not going to ask you to do it on the podcast, but now I'm like, okay, we got to play some of your music. Let's hear it.
I'll send you some old videos.
Sounds fun.
Some old ones.
Let's see. What else should we know about you and your business?
Which business?
Oh, that's a good question. Touche. Well, the real estate business. What else?
Okay.
What else should people know about, how to get a
Working
hold
with
of you,
me.
working
Yeah.
with you, what
Yeah.
makes you different?
Get a hold of me any way, shape, or form. I'm pretty active on everything. If you message me, I'm gonna see it and I'm gonna respond to it. So
Nice.
that's nice. My number's floating around everywhere
Find
out
you on
there.
Find you on
Yeah,
Instagram.
Instagram.
Like,
is
how
my
do people
number,
find people
Facebook.
anymore? They Google you and they find you on Instagram.
I am on Google too. You can. I mean, you might botch my name because my name has a weird spelling. So maybe it won't come up on Google if you
It'll be
don't
in the
spell
show
it.
notes. We'll make sure
Yeah,
it's
it'll
spelled
be
correctly.
somewhere on there.
All linked up to you.
But yeah, I mean, I think for me, I'm just laid back. I don't know. I think that's just, I'm like, okay, if you want to buy, I'm happy to help you. You want to
So
sell,
low pressure, lots
happy
of
to help
support.
you. But I'm not going to like come and bang down your door
Right.
if you don't respond to me.
Right. And I'm guessing I know at least one item that's going to be in the welcome home, gift
Cookies.
gift
Yep.
bag.
Always cookies.
Always cookies.
Always will be. And it's unique because a lot of times, cookies for closing gifts can be very tricky because a lot of times the bakers are booked for, a long period of time. And with closings, you don't really know super far in advance, like
Right.
when you're going to close on a home. So it's hard to plan. And so most of the time realtors can't, get cookies every single closing,
Mhm.
closing time. But
Unless
for me,
you're
I
doing
just
it
make
yourself.
them. So it works out. It's like, okay, this is what my clients are always going to get, that and other things. But mostly the cookies is
That's
what's exciting.
super fun. Cool. Well, I'll make sure that there's contact information in the show notes. People can get a hold of you.
Yeah.
And they can find you on Instagram. And for all of your real estate and custom cookie needs,
Yeah.
call Jaden.
Yeah. Usually if you just spell my name right, everything should pop up because my name pretty unique. So
Yeah.
usually if you just spell it right, it should pop up. Just not even have to say anything else.
Awesome.
Just Jaden.
I'll make sure that's in the notes. And thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having
And
me.
congrats on all your success. And looking forward to doing this again sometime soon.
Awesome. Thank you.
Stay up to date with Bay Area real estate. Hit subscribe now if you haven't already. Did you enjoy this episode? We love reviews in the Apple Podcasts app. We'll read yours on the show. This is By the Bay.
London Ear Media.